the 2021-22 season is going to go down in the history books for Newcastle United, regardless of what happens between now and the end of the season. And I just wanted to make a quick video really about the story of the season so far, and just kind of like the emotional rollercoaster that we've all been on as fans since August. So the season began in completely different circumstances, obviously, to how we find it ourselves today. And really, there was very little hope or expectation or, any kind of belief that we could do anything in the Premier League this season. We still had Steve Bruce in charge. We'd only signed Willock, who, fair enough, had finished the end of the previous season really well. But again, the recruitment of Mike Ashley was not enough. We knew that, and sure enough, we started the season as badly as we imagined we would. We lost to West Ham 4-2 on the opening day of the season at home, and that kind of set the tone for, quite a long time. For at least 2 months, really, we had Bruce, and we had this kind of awful situation. So we lost to Villa away. We then lost in the League Cup on penalties to Burnley. And the results just kept coming, and they were just all negative, and the performances were terrible, and the atmosphere around Steve Bruce was getting worse than it ever had been before. So it was just getting worse and worse and worse, to the point where it was pretty much untenable. But then we had an owner in Mike Ashley who had no desire to get rid of him, so it was just horrendous. We had a couple of draws against Leeds and then Watford. Again, nothing was great, and we played Wolves away. And I remember that Wolves away game on the 2nd of October, and just feeling like this is nailed on relegation. This we've been here before, and actually this feels worse. And I think a lot of people who travelled to the Wolves game, that's how they felt. That really was the moment when it was just, there was no hope at that point. If there was any before, it had all gone at the Wolves game. And then, of course, between the Wolves game and the Tottenham game 2 weeks later, we got the news that we were all hoping for and praying for, and we got it, and the takeover went through, and the scenes outside St James's Park were just incredible. And the feeling of relief to know that Mike Ashley was gone. That was what it was about at that point. It was about getting rid of, the millstone that Ashley was around the club's neck. It was the fact that he had gone. That was what was celebrated. It wasn't necessarily about who the new owners were at that point. Obviously, let's be honest, most fans of most clubs would have celebrated the fact that their club becoming the richest club in the world. I don't know what that actually means in a sense. We'll find out over the next decade maybe. But yeah, it was the fact that Ashley went, and the feeling of just joy of after 14 years, over 14 years of just it being crap, it being rubbish. It just, I'll be honest, I'd gone through periods where I'd almost just like given up on it. On supporting Newcastle. Not supporting Newcastle, but like making the effort to go to matches. I've said before on this channel, like going to matches for me is quite a big deal, because I have to travel basically like at least 4 to 5 hours all round just to get to one home match. So for me, it's a big deal. So do I want to be taking time out of my day to go and watch a Mike Ashley team? No, that was the decision I made quite often. So I went to a lot fewer games than I would have done. And then of course the feeling of optimism was there. Unfortunately, the new owners didn't get rid of Steve Bruce straight away. So for the Tottenham game, we still had him there. That it did sort of overshadow it a little bit. It wasn't ideal. We got off to an amazing start. We came out all guns blazing, but the fact was the team were just not fit enough. They were not good enough, and we eventually lost 3-2. But things felt better around the club instantly, and Staveley came in, did some great interviews, and those messages and vibes have continued, and it's been really good. And then, of course, we had the run of games where we felt like, right, this is it now. Palace away, we can do this. We drew. We didn't win. And it took us another handful of games before we finally got the Burnley match on the 4th of December where we actually beat them and we won our first game of the season. And that feeling was amazing. That felt like, yes, this is it. This is it now. We've got our first win. We can just kick on and we can do this. But then we had a run of games, Leicester away, Liverpool away and Man City at home, where we conceded 11 goals in 3 games. And the reality was this squad wasn't good enough. And I remember being at the Leicester game and to be fair, the Leicester game, we didn't deserve to lose 4-0. We deserved to lose the game probably on the balance of it, but we didn't deserve to be on the end of a 4-0 thrashing. But this was the problem we had. We were conceding so many goals. It was just horrendous. And then, of course, Liverpool, where the performance was loads better with Eddie Howe coming in. When Eddie Howe came in, I should go back to the Brentford game, really. That was another one of those games where we felt, right, let's get this win. Let's start winning games. And, we played so much better against Brentford. Unfortunately, Eddie Howe wasn't there because he had COVID, but the performance was improved immediately. And we drew 3-3 in the end. We could have won it, but we didn't. And that kind of carried on until, like I say, we got the Burnley win. But the Brentford game felt decent. It felt like we could see that Eddie Howe was having an impact immediately. And even though we had that run of games after the Burnley game of Leicester, Liverpool, Man City, we were improving all the time. And it felt like you could see what Eddie Howe was trying to do. Then we played Man United just after Christmas and drew 1-1. And I'm still angry at that result, that we didn't win, because we deserved to win that football match. And it just felt, again, like, we just cannot get this season going. Like, we're nearly into 2022 and we just can't get the season going. We should have won that game. If we'd have won that game, no one would have argued about it. But we didn't. And then, of course, we come into January, the transfer window opens, we feel really happy about that. Then we play Cambridge in the Cup. Kieran Trippier's in the team on his debut and we lose 1-0 in the FA Cup. Now, with hindsight, that doesn't bother me in the slightest. However, at the time, that felt like an absolute disaster. And then the week after, we played Watford at home. And again, we were winning that game and we conceded a really, really late goal and we ended up drawing it. And there's certain moments in the season where you've just felt like, this is hopeless. We are not going to escape relegation here. And the Watford game was just like, how many more of these disappointments can we take? And it just felt like we should have beaten Watford. And if we'd have taken 4 points from Man United and Watford, we would have been delighted. What we didn't realise at that point was that Man United and Watford games were the beginning of a run of 9 games where we didn't lose a match. And then, of course, we played Leeds before the winter break where they went over to Saudi Arabia, and we beat Leeds, and that was just huge. Shelby scored the free kick. It was massive. It wasn't actually one of our better performances, but it was just a really important result. And so all of a sudden we'd taken 5 points from 3 games at that point, and then we had a nice break where the players could get together, and it was great. And then we came back and we had that run of games where Everton and Villa at home, and we won both of them. So we ended up winning 3 games in a row, and then all of a sudden, all bets were off. Newcastle looked decent, and we did look decent. And of course, we had our new signings. Dan Burns come in and been amazing. Targett's done really well at left back. Trippier was sensational in those first few games he played for us. Gutted about his injury, clearly, but in terms of improving defence, it was just amazing. Bruno came in, couldn't get in the team because Joe Linton and Shelby and Willock were actually performing so well. Joe Linton's just stepped up. Since the Norwich game, this has been said before, and I didn't mention the Norwich game as another one of those moments where we felt we'd just kind of let this go. But, of course, Kieran Clark getting sent off after a few minutes against Norwich at home. And we take the lead in that game with 10 men, and then unfortunately concede a late goal. What came out of that game, though, was the fact that Joe Linton had an absolute blinder for us. And it was a revelation that Eddie Howe stuck with, is that Joe Linton's position is this central midfield role where he just kind of bosses it. He just absolutely bosses it and is incredible. So it's so good to see. And then, of course, so then we had this brilliant run that ended, of course, with the Chelsea match where we lost 1-0. Again, we feel hard done by in that game because of poor refereeing and VAR non-decisions that I think are still gutted about that. Everton, and then we lost to Everton as well. So that's kind of where we're at. And we suddenly find ourselves in a position where, we're like 9 points clear of the relegation zone. We've got 9 games to go. The season's not over yet, but the feeling that I have now compared to when we first kicked off against West Ham back in August, when we were owned by Mike Ashley, that was down here and now we're right up here, and it's just like, this is incredible what's happening. And all this season is about is surviving. That is it. That is the only thing we need to worry about. And then the future after that is so exciting because we are in safe hands. But it's been just such an interesting season. I'd love to know your highs and your lows. What have you enjoyed about this season? What have you hated about this season? Because it's interesting. I don't think we'll never have another season like this at Newcastle. At least I hope we never do, because the extremes from having Steve Bruce and Mike Ashley to Eddie Howe and the Saudi-backed PIF and Staveley and the Reuben brothers, it is night and day, and the club is coming alive again. It's just wonderful.